Hello friends, welcome to today's class. So today in continuation with the previous classes, wherein in the previous video we have seen what is address mapping and what is virtual memory, how this address mapping is used inside your virtual memory. All those things have been cleared in the previous video lecture. Please have a look at it. Today, moving ahead with the next very important memory system we will be trying to discuss, which is nothing but your secondary storage. So as we already know, semiconductor memories are small in size and are very volatile. And usually when we say small in size, it means that sometimes they will be costly. You can just take the example of your cache memory. Okay, but when we speak of non-volatile, they are large in size and they usually come at a lower cost, right? So this example, the best example would be all your secondary storage devices today what we are discussing. And to give you some example, it could be your disks, tapes or optical disks and so on. Okay, so to move ahead, the first type of secondary storage device we will be trying to look upon is your hard disk, which is magnetic hard disk. Again, when we speak of disks and tapes, we speak of two types. One is magnetic and another one is optical. Optical is something wherein we speak, they operate based on the light. Okay, but right now in today's section we'll be seeing about your magnetic hard disks. Okay, so you can just have a look at this slide. You can see here the mechanical structure of the disk in the first figure. In the second figure you can see how the read and write happens, and in the third figure you are seeing how the data is represented. What type of formatting is used to represent your data, that is seen in your figure number C. Okay, so when we speak of magnetic disk, we usually found that, please observe the first diagram now. When we speak of magnetic disk, we usually found that it consists of one or more disks, as you can see in the diagram, and they are put on one top of another, and they are usually supported with the help of a spindle. So the magnetic film is deposited on each of these disks on both the sides, and the disk is placed in a rotating drive, so that when the magnetized surface moves in close to the heads, you should see a read and write operation. So I hope that is very clear. Using the figure, you can clearly see there that it consists of a disk, right? It consists of disk, and on the disk they have put the magnetic film, and when the shaft rotates, the read and write operation happens. Okay, so when you see the second figure there, when you see the second figure, the head consists of a magnetic yoke and a magnetic coil, as you can see there, and the digital information, all the digital information will be stored on the magnetic fields, and this information is stored on the magnetic fields when we apply the current pulse. And one more very important thing is, this current pulse must be applied with proper and exactly correct polarity to the coil, so that the magnetization of the film would happen below the head of the switch and in parallel to the magnetic field. The same head can be also used for reading. Whatever we did for writing, the same head can also be used for reading. And if I want to use it for reading, we need to change the magnetic field in the vicinity of the head, so that the film and yoke induces a voltage in the coil. And again, very important thing, the polarity of this voltage is monitored with the help of the control circuitry, so that we can determine the state of the magnetization of the film. So the only change in the magnetic field under the head can be sensed during the read operation. Therefore, it is very important to have two binary states. One is 0, which is and another one is 1. So we should have two binary states, 0 and 1, which represent two opposite states of magnetization. Say for example, a voltage is induced in the head only at 0 to 1 and 1 to 0 transition in the bit stream. So to determine the number of zeros and ones stored, a clock must also be provided, which will also provide you for the synchronization. Okay friends, and such many techniques have been developed so that the encoding can be done easily. Now we are speaking of your third figure, wherein we will be speaking of your encoding. That is how the data is stored inside the magnetic disk. So one such method is nothing but what it will do is it will combine both the clocking information and the data, and that method is called as Manchester encoding, and sometimes we also call it as phase encoding, as you can see in the C figure. In this figure, if you observe clearly, it has two very important things. If you clearly, very closely observe the first half of the figure, which is on the left hand side, a 0 is represented by a negative pulse, which is followed by a positive pulse, and a 1 is represented by a positive pulse, which is followed by a negative pulse. Okay, so this is the way you represent your data, which is zeros and ones, using your Manchester encoding. So whenever the changes in the magnetization happen, then each data bit at the midpoint of each bit period will be providing you the clocking information. This method, that wherein we are getting the clocking information from each data bit, is called as self-clocking scheme. Remember friends, the data bits itself are providing you the timing information, and such timing information is called as self-clocking scheme. Now, every technique has some disadvantage, has some drawback. So one drawback of this Manchester encoding is it is poor bit storage density. That is, the storage density which is available in your Manchester encoding is very poor. So this becomes very difficult in this whole thing. Okay. Now, speaking of how the data is organized on the disk, we need to see how the organization of the data happens on the disk. The organization happens as shown in the figure. That is, you can see a surface which is divided into concentric tracks, and here each track is divided into sectors. So whatever the set of corresponding tracks you see on the surfaces of the stack of disks forms a logical cylinder. So each track is forming a logical cylinder, and the data on all the tracks of the cylinder can be accessed without moving the read and write heads. So a sector, whatever you can see on the disk, is nothing but the smallest addressable unit in the disk. So whatever the sector you are seeing right now in this figure, it is the smallest addressable unit in the disk. And you can very easily make a point here that the data bits are stored serially in each track, and each track can store somewhere around 512 bytes of data. Each track has to store 512 bytes of data, and the sectors, whatever you can see, these are preceded by sector headers, and these sector headers consist of all the addressing information, such as identification, which we use to find what is my desired sector and what is my selected track. Following all the data, whatever we are seeing right now, it also consists of an additional bits, which we call as error correcting codes. Error correcting codes are very important because using error correcting codes we can detect and correct errors. So that ECC, we call it as ECC, it becomes a major part of your addressing information. That is, it consists in sector header. Okay. So I hope so I am clear with these concepts, friends. Let us have a look at them in the form of a slides now. So I want to access the data on a disk, right? What are required? The first thing we require is your sector header. So what does sector header consist of? Sector header consists of all the informations regarding that particular sector and that particular selected track. That's what we discussed just now. Followed by that, we have a very important thing which is called as ECC, which is nothing but your error correction code. And why this error correction code is used? In order to detect and correct the errors. Okay. Next comes is your formatting process. So unformatted disk is something which has no information on its track. Say for example, I have an unformatted disk, it means that there is no information on that disk. But when a formatting happens, it divides the disk physically into tracks and sectors. And the disk controller keeps a record of the defective sectors and excludes them from use. So the disk is subsequently divided into logical partitions. So there must be at least one partition, and the track density must range from 800 to 200 tracks per centimeter. So formatting is very important, friends. The third point what we are speaking. Without formatting, you can observe that there are no tracks and no sectors. Without sectors, with no sectors and no tracks, there will be no data storage inside the disk. Okay. Next very important thing is your inner tracks and outer tracks. So this is again very important thing, because the whole data can be stored in either two things. One is your inner track and another one is your outer track. Without these things you cannot store the whole data. Okay. So usually when we have a disk head, it does both read and well as write, and this consists of concentric tracks. That's why we are concentric means what now? Connected to one another. That's why we are saying them inner track and outer track. So as we already know, a sector is what now? It is the smallest addressable unit in a disk. Okay. So next very important thing is your access time. Access time consists of two things. One is seek time and another one is rotational delay or latency time. So sometimes using these concepts, they will be asking some simple problems using your access time, seek time, and as well as your calculate the disk capacity. They will give most of the things. Just you need to use a formula and you need to calculate the disk capacity and all those things. Okay. Now what is seek time, friends? Seek time is nothing but it is a time required to move the read write head to the proper track. So this usually depends on the initial position of the head relative to the track specified in the address and the number of tracks that the head must move across to reach its target. So seek values usually range in the time seconds from 5 to 20 milliseconds. So you can just remember seek time as nothing but the time required to move the head to the track. That's all. Seek time is nothing but that is the time required to move the head to the track. Which head? Read write head. Okay. So this is nothing but your seek time. So coming to next thing, which is rotational delay, when sometimes it is also called as latency time. So in the exam they might ask you either explain rotation delay or they might ask you either explain your latency time. So this time is nothing but it is the amount of time that elapses after the head is positioned over the track. So try to find the difference, friends. Seek time is what now? The time required to move your head to the where? Just pause it and think for a second where you will move the read and write head. You will be moving it to the track. Right? So seek time is the time required to move the read write head to the track. And what is latency time then? See how they are connected. Latency time is nothing but it is the time that is observed after the head is positioned over the track. So this first comes is your seek time, next comes is your latency time, and this time occurs when the head is positioned over the track. Okay. So this is also called as rotational delay. Remember that very important thing. So on the average we can say that this is the time for half of a rotation of the disk, and the maximum delay would be, or the maximum latency is the time for one revolution of the disk. Okay. So you can totally say that the access time is the sum of seek time and your latency time. So whatever the access time we are speaking of, it is addition of seek time and your rotational delay. That is nothing but your latency time. Okay. So it can only happen when the few sectors of the data are moved in a single operation, and then access time will be longer. Okay. So this is very important, friends. Finally, the last one is nothing but your data buffer or cache, which most of us already know already. It is the buffer time, or it is the buffer which is used so that you can conduct the data transfer in a speed manner. Okay. So finally, coming to this very important thing, that is a disk controller of the system bus. Okay. So you can see here, friends, disk controller as we already know, disk controller is nothing but it is placed in between your processor, main memory, and your outside memory. This you already know that disk controller is nothing but it is a secondary storage device, right? And it consists of two disk drives, say disk drive 1 and disk drive 2, and it consists of it does many major functions, as you already know. Like, what are those? These are those: seek, read, write, and error checking. You have seen already what is seek, what is read, what is write. What is write, friends? It transfers the data from main memory to the disk. What is read? It is nothing but it starts at a specific address in the register, and data is serially read from the disk, which is assembled into words and placed into data buffer. So that is read. What is seek, friends? It is nothing but whatever the disk drive is there, it will be moved to read and write head from its current position to the desired track. This we have already seen all these things. Okay. Then finally, coming to the last topic, which is nothing but your RAID disk arrays. Now, when we compare these RAID disk arrays with your other secondary memories, the speed is relatively less, even though the storage capacity is extended to a larger extent. That is, the storage capacity is very high. And high performance devices, always remember, will be bit costly. So usually you can just observe the second point here. Using multiple disks makes it cheaper for huge storage and also possible to improve the reliability of the overall system. So that's why RAID is very important. Okay. So the following are some of the commonly used RAID are given below. So RAID 0, which we usually call as data stripping. So what it does is it will take the data and it will map it into the physical drives in the form of an array, and thereby it will create a virtual disk. Okay. Coming to next one, which is RAID 1, which we will usually call it as mirroring. Mirroring means what now? Copying. That is, the identical copies of the data are kept in two disks. So you can say there it stores a duplicate sets of data on two separate drives, so that if any one of the disk fails, then the mirrored drive will take over and it will function as the primary drive. Okay. So next comes is your RAID 5. So RAID 2, 3 and 4 are usually used to increase the reliability. Okay. RAID 5 is a parity based error recovery. Okay. So what it does here is it maps the data whatever is there on the drives and stores the parity information of each data, and the data is backed up either on the identical disk or on the multiple disk. Okay. So RAID 5 is again very important. It is very much, why it is very much important? Because it will be helping us to overcome all the errors using your parity bits. Okay. So this is all regarding your RAIDs, that is various RAID based hard disks. Then you have something like SCSI disk, which is not so important. This disk will be usually connected to a standard SCSI bus, and we can make some concurrent accesses to this disk, and it is usually used in your servers. These are very expensive disks, SCSI disk. Okay. So friends, this completes your module 4, this video. Okay. And if you have any doubts, you can just put in the chat boxes. Thank you for watching. We'll again meet in the next lectures. Thank you.